Good afternoon. Before we start the second screening of the Korean retrospective, I wanted to thank the director of Istituto Culturale Coreano in Roma, Mr. Woo Jung-suk, for supporting us with this program and being so generous and kind to the festival. I believe, yes, the gentleman over there, Mr. Oh Jung-suk. So for this kind of extended introduction to the film, we have the director with us, but we have Jin Cho from the London Korean Film Festival doing the interpretation job. She's not a professional, but she asked me to say this, but I'm sure she will do a great job. And also Mark Morris from Cambridge, I believe, would do the moderator. Recovering academic from Cambridge, with the moderator panel. So I would invite them on the stage. The director of more than 100 films since 1958, half of which adaptations of classics of Korean literature, and one of the giants of South Korean cinema, Mr. Kim Soo-yong.
We have roughly half an hour before the film Bloodline is screened, Hyeolmaek. I wanted to say, because you've been kind enough to already introduce our very special guest, I won't reintroduce him. I did want to say one thing, though. The Korean Film Archive, who preserves and restores Korean film, one of the world's leading institutions, and certainly technology ahead of many, did all they could with the print of this film, Bloodline. You will see that there's some rough patches. Just stay with it and whatnot. Sometimes, because of the quality of some of the old films, it can seem that they come from a more distant decade than the 1960s. But in the program we put together of 7 films for you all here in Bologna, we focused on the 1960s because so many films were made then, many of them of great value. Some of them capture a social history that would be impossible to recover without this visual archive. We were asked by the people here to come up with some sort of a story of an artistic career. We asked the director, most important person, what he would like to talk about. And he suggested a number of key films, mainly from the 1960s, one perhaps we'll get to from the 1970s. So we're going to try to stitch together some sort of story that touches on these films, tells a little bit about him and his career, and they will boot us out at 3 o'clock. Because the most important thing after meeting director Kim Soo-yong is to see his film. We're showing, of course, 2 films by him. This film and the one called Hyeolmaek. They're very contrasting films. This film looks much more realistic, although full of humor. Hyeolmaek is a much more modernistic film that some Korean critics have compared, not strictly, but in general terms, to films of a kind of modernity, a modernism, an unsettling sense of existentialism that in this country you could identify with many, many filmmakers from the 60s, 70s, and beyond. But often the Korean critics refer to Antonioni as a natural point of reference, whereas with this film, Bloodline, I always thought in terms of something like Jessica or Rossellini, or even the softer, almost a kind of comedy mixed in with neorealism. Anyhow, see what you think. I have some questions that we negotiated about, just so that we have a little idea of where we're going to go. And Jim? The first thing I was going to ask is very, very simple. Director Kim began his career in the late 1950s, as you've heard. Before that, he spent many years in the army, working there on film. So I was interested is, how did he go from being Captain Kim to Director Kim? How did you make that transition to commercial filmmaking in those years?
예, 1950년 6월 25일 서울에서 큰 전쟁이 났습니다. 그때 제 나이는 21살이었는데요. 국방의 의무 때문에 저도 총을 들고 그 전장에 나갔습니다.
In 1950, 25th of June, there was a Korean War started, and I was 21 years old, and I was asked to join the military.
제가 전쟁에서 본 것은 사람을 죽이는 것과 사람을 한테 죽음을 당하는 것과 죽고 죽는 것을 눈앞에서 봤습니다. 피가 튀고 사람이 어떻게 죽어가면서 소리를 지르고 참으로 비참하게 죽는 것을 몇 년을 계속해서 봤습니다.
For several years, whilst I was in military, I witnessed how people kill each other and how people are being killed. It was extremely drastic, but I had to go through the experience, and that kind of traumatized me.
저는 인간이 이렇게 잔인하고 이렇게 비극적이고 이렇게 앞이 안 보이는 그런 존재인 것을 그 전쟁 총 들고 따라다니면서 눈으로 본 게 그거예요. 그러니까 전쟁이 얼마만큼 비참하고 아무리 좋은 얘기로 전쟁을 이렇게 쌓아도 모두 전쟁은 사람을 죽이고 죽는 거 그 외에는 아무것도 없습니다.
So what I experienced and witnessed was the extreme cruelty and tragedy and absolute no hope in the process of the war. People sometimes glorifies the war and justifies them, but what I witnessed was the sort of true image of the war being involved.
그런 군대 생활을 8년 하고 제대를 하고 제가 영화 감독이 돼서 시간과 공간을 내 마음대로 조정을 하면서 그 안에 인간이 더 좀 선량하고 더 좀 희망적이고 더 좀 사람을 도와주는 그런 경우는 없나를 영화를 통해서 그려보고 싶은 행동을 시작하게 된 겁니다.
After 8 years of being in the military, I wanted to perhaps be a film director because that is a job that you can direct the time and space, and I wanted to create a kind of different time and space that gives a kind of hope to people.
이 혈맥은 제가 감독 데뷔해서 5번째 영화인데요. 이것도 희극이에요. 보기에는 희극으로 보이지만 그 내부에는 인간의 아픈 슬픔 같은 인간의 원형적인 제가 전장에서 본 그 어두운 그림자들이 밑에 다 깔려있는 그런 영화입니다.
The film you're about to watch is my 5th feature, The Bloodline. It seems like a comedy, but underneath there is deep sorrow and dark side of the humanity underlined.
그러니까 여기 나오는 사람들은 모두 다 이북에서 저 노스코리아에서 피난민을 온 레퓨지들, 피난민들이에요. 그들이 돈과 또 여러 가지 물정의 고통을 받으면서도 혈맥, 사람 체내에 흐르고 있는 부모, 형제의 그 따뜻함이라고 볼까, 그 끈적끈적한 그 인연을 잊지 못한다는 그런 게 겉으로 나와 있습니다.
All the characters in this film are North Korean refugees, and even though they are economically and materialistically impoverished, but they still manage to maintain this warmth and closeness as a human being, as a family. And I wanted to portray that.
저는 양쪽에 두 분이 있는데 어제 처음 만났어요, 이 두 분들. 근데 이분은 영국 사람이라고 그래요. 근데 너무나 그 질문을 나한테 7가지 질문을 주는데 이분이 오늘 여기서 물어보겠다고. 나는 영화를 한 50년 동안 했거든요, 감독 생활은. 이렇게 질문이 리얼하게 아주 나한테 내가 스스로 하는 질문처럼 한 건 이분이 처음이에요. 난 어제 보고 놀랐어요. 7가지 질문에 대해서 조금 얘기하게 될 거예요.
On a side note, just to say, I met these two people just yesterday, and I received this set of questionnaires from Mark. I believe he's from the UK. And I was really surprised by the sort of depth of understanding of his about my work, and I'm just really mesmerized.
이분은 한국말도 좀 잘해요. 그러나 일본말을 더 잘해요. 저는 일본말 조금 더 잘해요, 이 사람보다. 왜? 저 일본 사람 교육을 받았거든요. 중학교를 일본 나왔을 때. 그러니까 우리 둘이 일본말 해도 다 되는데, 그럼 여러분이 일본말 못 알아듣죠? 그거 할 수 없이 이렇게 통역을 하고 이렇게 얘기를 하게 된 겁니다.
Well, actually, we both speak Japanese, and we managed to communicate in Japanese yesterday and today. But because we believe that you probably don't understand Japanese, we have to talk in Korean and have to have a translator's help.
Well, that was a surprise aside. Let's get away from that as quickly as we can. I want to talk. I want to have a few questions about the film you're about to see. This is from Bloodline, Hyeolmaek. On the left of your screen is a very, very famous actor, one of the most loved actors ever in Korean cinema history, Kim Soo-yong. We were talking earlier today, and director Kim likened this actor, Kim Soo-yong, or I rather, started the conversation, saying that he was always, when you see him, you want to smile. He could do multiple roles, almost any sort of film. He could sort of round it in a kind of friendly realism. And I liken him to the current great star Song Kang-ho. But he says this man was better than Song Kang-ho, the great A-lister of film today.
김승호 씨는 장가방이라는 여기 그 사람을 존경했어요. 그 사람 연기가 너무 좋다고. 자기가 아마 흉내를 내려고 해도 그렇게 안 된다고. 지금은 죽어서 물론 저분이 없지만 장가방을 굉장히 존경하고 그 연기를 칭찬하고 있었고 저분하고서는 한 15편의 영화를 했는데요. 하나도 실패한 게 없어요. 열심히 합니다. 보시면 알지만 이 영화 전체가 희극적 코미디처럼 그려져 있죠. 내부에는 깊숙이 비극이에요. 아주 이거는 말할 수 없는 비극을 웃기는 걸로 이렇게 카프라지한 거죠.
Actually, this actor Kim Soo-yong was a huge fan of Jang Ga-beng, which is featured I think this year here. And I worked with him for 15 feature films, and we never had any failed sort of cooperation. And every time he was just great. He's just an amazing actor.
So I'll now ask some questions. You mentioned before the importance of aspects of cinematic time and cinematic space. I wanted to ask about the space we're going to observe in this film that you're about to see, Bloodline. Because there seems to be an obvious contrast that isn't just a simple realistic contrast, but perhaps more symbolic or socially important between the poor people up in their slum. It's a sort of shantytown favela on the heights, quite close to the center of Seoul, where the prosperity of a new kind of Korea was just slowly beginning in the early 1960s. So I wanted to ask him about what should we make of this spatial contrast between the poor people up on the hill and the big city you see in the distance. And some of the characters occasionally visit, but they never linger there very long. They come back up to the hill.
이 영화는 서울의 중심가, 그러니까 서울 레일웨이 스테이션이 내다보이는 중심가 풀밭에서 찍었는데 지금 그 자리에는 20층짜리 힐탑 호텔이 서 있어요. 아주 무지무지하게 큰 게 서 있는데 나는 시간과 공간을 조작을 해가지고 막 자유롭게 만들지만 지금 그 빌딩이 있을 줄은 미처 몰랐어요. 있으면 내가 조금 더 재미있게 좀 아렌지를 했었을 거예요. 그런데 나는 여기 눈에 보이는 거는 여러분이 보시면 금방 알도록 어려운 영화는 아니에요. 그러나 조금 습관과 뭐 이런 전통 뭐 이런 것 때문에 좀 쉽게 이해는 안 가겠지만 여기에 보이지 않는 게 하나 있어요. 이 사람들의 소원은 먹을 걸 달라, 건강을 달라. 그리고 그걸 누구한테 비느냐? 하나님한테 빌어요. 지저스 크라이스트 할 때 그냥 우리 좀 살려달라고 비는데 이 언덕 위에서 이렇게 보면요 서울에는 유난히 교회가 많아요. 서울은 아무리 쳐다봐도 전부 교회예요. 전부 십자가가 전부 있거든요. 그래서 우리 전부들 읽고 십자가 저 하나님이 우리를 살려줄 것이다, 우리를 도와줄 것이다. 늘 그렇게 이제 말들을 하는데 이 풀밭에서 보면은 십자가가 이게 너무 높기 때문에 저 밑에 깔려 있어요. 사람들이 걸어다니는 발의 높이 정도도 안 돼요. 십자가가. 그래서 이 불쌍한 사람들이 맨날 하나님들아 좀 살려달라고 그러는데 끝내는 하나님은 아무 얘기도 안 하고 죽을 사람은 죽이고 살릴 사람 살리고 다 그래서 마지막에 관이나 가는데 여기 보시면 그 풀밭으로 헤치고 이 관이나 가면 난 저쪽에 십자가가 보이도록 이렇게 카메라맨한테 요구를 했는데 우리 카메라맨들이 알았다고 그래놓고 나중에 촬영한 걸 보니까 십자가가 안 보여요. 왜 그러니까 자기는 독실한 기독교 신자라 도저히 그렇게 못 있겠다. 그래서 여기는 그게 없는데 내 생각에 사실 그렇게 사람들이 안타깝게 하나님을 부르는데 하나님은 이 가난한 사람을 버리고 도와주지 않았다. 이것도 한번 그리고 싶었던 생각입니다.
I did say that the film director is kind of has this position to manipulate time and space. But in this case, where the film takes place is a center of Seoul, where the main train station is. And now, after more than 40 years later, there is one of the fanciest hotel on the spot, which I did not imagine, even with my directorial imagination. And this film is not a very complex film. You will just get what the film is trying to say, although there are some very Korean nuances and cultural sort of habits. What's invisible you may not catch in this film is something that I want to explain a little bit. Everyone in this film has a faith in God, Christian God, and you may know that Seoul has so many churches. Seoul has a big population of Christianity, so there are many churches, and from this hill, the shanty town the film is located, from that angle you will see all the church kind of crosses, but they are not above you, but they are kind of below you. And so I wanted to capture this kind of ironic position, and even though they believe that God will save you, but that actually God is below you. But my DOP, and I've asked my DOP to capture this in an ironical angle, but he's actually deeply Christian, and he said he would do it, but he actually did not capture it. So unfortunately that is not captured in the film, but that's something I wanted to convey.
That's very good. What else should I ask about this marvelous film? I think because you're going to be able to see it, I think we'll let this film speak for itself. Right now, I want to, if you show that next slide, I want to say a few things about films that mean a lot to director Kim, but we're not screening at this film festival. However, all the films we're talking about are available, have been available on DVD, and they can be found after this film festival, I think, most of them, on the wonderful Korean Film Archive channel on YouTube. So the Korean Film Archive doesn't only preserve and restore films, they are an online archive and a library where you can study thousands of Korean films, VOD. But the generosity of this institution means that there's almost 200 classic films from one era and another available at the end of a button. So if you get interested, please follow it up. It would be wonderful to think we've corrupted some of you to go and see all the Korean films. So I'm going to talk about this next film, which is from 2 years after Hyeolmaek. Talk about Kim, a seaside village. This is very different. We move away from a big city to a village on the southwestern shore. Poor people, a fishing village, where many of the men have died while out fishing. So what we have is a village that seems to be half populated by widows who help each other out, who torment and tease each other, but they find a lot of comfort in one another. And sometimes we will see a scene where it seems they get a great deal of comfort from one another for want of having any men around. Now, into this sort of collective of women, a kind of female chorus, is embedded a tragic romance between one very young widow and a young sort of wanderer who seems to be hanging out in the village. And I'm going to turn now again to the question of space, because we go from this rather idyllic, lyrical scene of a fishing village to them having to escape for various reasons deep into the mountains. So we have a contrast between the seaside and the mountains. And as you probably know, Korea and Italy are quite similar. They both have a huge mountain chain or two that run right down the peninsulas. So you're never far from a mountain, as in this country, when you're in Korea. So I was wondering, what nuances do you see beyond the simple, realistic fact of the sea, the seaside people, and people trying to live deep in the mountain? Sorry, that got long.
실례했습니다. 사실은 갯마을에는 자연과 인간을 반반으로 그린 영화입니다. 자연은 뭐냐? 바다, 산, 마을, 바람, 해가 뜬다, 별 이런 것이 다 자연이죠. 사람은 어부들. 그런데 갯마을을 우리가 지금 한 50년쯤 됐는데요. 그 장소에는 지금도 그 바다가 그냥 있어요. 단지 집들을 지어가지고 아파트가 좀 들어서는데 하나 변하지 않은 게 그 뒷동산 산이 하나 있어요. 월매산이라고 한국말로 부르는데 그 산은 전설에 의하면 한국 사람들 한 달에 한 번 어두워진대. 그 뭐 달 그림자가 달이 있는데도 새까맣게 어두워진대요. 그렇게 어두워지면은 바다에 풍랑이 일어나서 많은 남자들이 희생을 당한다는 그런 전설 같은 얘기가 있는데 지금도 그 산이 있고 그 어두워지는지 그건 나는 확인을 못했는데 있습니다. 있는데 문제는 이 자연의 변화를 인간이 수긍하기 위해서 이제 이 영화가 진행이 되는데 산이 나왔건 바다가 나왔건 아무 상관이 없습니다. 도시가 나왔건 어디가 나와도 되는데 단지 왜 여자들만이 이렇게 가는 길이 험악하냐? 왜 여자들만이 이렇게 애쓰고 사느냐. 이것이 동양의 하나의 철학이라고 그럴까. 그래도 여자들이 자꾸 살아야 한다는 게 이제 우리나라의 전통적인 이제 부덕이라고 얘기는 할 수 있습니다만서도 하여튼 이 갯마을에서 집단적인 여자들이 자기네들 보호하면서 살아가려고 그런다. 그리고 그 외에 자연들이 돌멩이 하나 굴러가는 것까지 다 살아있는 것처럼 그려져 있다. 이것은 자연과 인간을 같은 비율로 다 그리기 위해서 만든 겁니다. 물론 내가 지금 여기서 말하는 거하고 오늘 갯마을을 안 보기 때문에 약간 차질이 있을 거예요. 그러나 갯마을도 언제 한번 기회가 있으면 감상하셨으면 좋겠습니다.
One thing I want to say about this film, The Sea Village, is that I wanted to treat the nature and human living in with equal importance. There is this mountain called Hyeolmaek Mountain as a backdrop of this film, and there is this myth that every once a month this mountain would turn into completely pitch black, even though there might be some moonlight, but for some reason this particular day it would just become pitch black. And this is the day all the fishermen, the male fishermen who went fishing, they might get sacrificed and they may be surrendered to the sea. And so I wanted to kind of, having that in mind, I wanted to sort of capture the changes in nature and unpredictability, and so whether it's a mountain or a sea, so I wanted to portray that, and equally I wanted to portray the sort of tough lives that women have. Perhaps it's some kind of Asian, the cultural understanding in Asia. The women sort of endure certain toughness in life, and this film definitely reflects that. And you won't be seeing this film today, so I won't go into it too much. But hopefully one day you will be able to see this film because I like it very much.
Yeah, and another question that we sounded out, we thought about was, what happens in the case where a film unit arrives in a fishing village or a farming village? How do the crew, the actors, relate with the local people who are very important for providing at least background context for the film? So how did you get along with real people?
참 협력이 잘 돼가지고요. 물도 나눠먹고 서로들 친하게 지냈는데요. 내가 지금 보니까 아까는 영화를 보려고 여러분들이 굉장히 호기심이 있어가지고 스크린을 쳐다봤는데 지금은 좀 졸음이 오는 그런 분들도 계세요. 우리 얘기가 너무 긴 것 같고 재미가 없는 것 같아서 이 얘기는 어떻게 좀 줄이는 방법으로 영화를 빨리 배우는 게 어떻습니까?
It was a great collaboration, and the crew and the villagers got very close. But now I can see that maybe some people are falling asleep, and I don't want to maybe bore you too much. Perhaps we should just stop and move on to the screening of the film.
What do you think? Amazing. Shall we say something about the film we are screening? Ange, Miss.
Which he would introduce actually tomorrow.
So we'll introduce it tomorrow.
사실 영화는 보라고 만드는 거죠. 이렇게 말로 하는 게 아니거든요. 영화는 아무런 말로 해도 소용없어요. 눈으로 봐야 하거든요. 그러니까 영화를 봐야 한다는 게 첫째 조건이에요.
I think the most important thing about cinema is that you have to shut up and watch.
I just have a small announcement that tomorrow at 12 o'clock we'll be over in the auditorium for our... Tomorrow or the day after?
I believe it's the day after.
Day after, okay. Good note though. The day after we will be meeting for a panel. We'll have a full session with two experts from the Korean Film Archive, with my pal Jin here from the London Korean Film Festival, and I'll be sort of messing about trying to relax people and try to get more information, particularly because one of the themes, obviously what we're doing isn't just celebrating the Korean film generally or the South Korean film of the 60s, but is the fact of restoring films that have been all but lost, and how important that work is. Nobody needs to be told that here at the Cineteca and in Bologna generally. But one of the things we'll be able to do is zero in on this question of restoration, and give a bit more context, a bit more history concerning this important era of filmmaking, the 1960s in Korea. So if you would, let us give a good round of applause to a very fine director, Kim Soo-yong. Final comments.
나는 영화를 109개를 찍었어요. 109개를 찍었는데 그래도 영화 공부를 책을 보고 한 거는 러셀이나 저기 데시카의 그 사람들 영화를 봐가면서 공부를 했거든요. 난 이분들이 지금 살아있으면은 지금 얼마나 반갑게 얘기를 하면서 그 사람들 이건 왜 이렇게 됐느냐, 이건 네가 잘못 찍은 게 아니냐 그 얘기하고 싶어요. 근데 그분들은 다 떠나가고 그 주옥 같은 영화만 남아 있어요 지금. 근데 그분들하고 여러분은 같은 민족의 이태리 사람들이죠. 사실 한국에서도요 그 데시카나 러셀리니 같은 사람 굉장히 존경받습니다. 그 사람들은 이태리의 정치가나 경제인이나 뭐 다른 문화에 속해 있는 분들보다 더 굉장히 깊숙이 우리는 존경을 하고 있고, 나 개인도 그 두 사람을 굉장히 좋아해요. 그리고 참 좋은 영화들을 많이 만드는데 앞으로도 이 세계적으로 이태리가 좀 앞장서가지고 저 프랑스나 뭐 다른 나라보다도 좀 좋은 영화, 예술적인 영화, 다시 얘기해서 영화적인 영화로 더 좀 옛날의 영광을 되찾아 주시기를 바람하지 않습니다. 감사합니다.
I have made 109 films, but I can say that perhaps the two filmmakers I've actually studied are the two Italian filmmakers, Rossellini and De Sica. And if they were alive today, I wanted to meet them here and discuss my films, and I want them to critique my films as well. But unfortunately, they're gone. Yeah, I just have such a deep respect for these two directors, and I just hope that I'm so glad to be in Italy, and I hope that Italian cinema would just come back strong again and boom again and have the past glory again soon.
Thank you all.